The question of whether or not we are living in a simulation has been a topic of philosophical and scientific debate for many years. The idea behind this theory is that our reality might be a computer-generated simulation rather than a physical reality. And if this is so, how do we learn the rules of the program and win the game of life? There are a lot of mysteries regarding reality that we simply don't have the answers to. The question of reality itself has been pondered by philosophers, physicists, theorists, and those interested in the mysteries of the universe for quite some time. And it's likely that our minds only access a small fraction of what physical existence actually is. In this video, I'll share the arguments for both for and against simulation theory, as well as give you a very simple way to unplug from the so-called matrix so you can manifest what you want by recentering yourself and gaining access to all of the power within you to change the way your reality behaves if you don't like the experience that you're currently in. Let's first discuss what simulation theory is. This is actually a modern system of ideas with ancient roots, with a hypothesis that reality could be simulated. This theory, famously detailed in the 1999 film The Matrix, states that we're actually living in an advanced digital construct, such as a computer simulation, that's overseen by a higher form of intelligence and that's indistinguishable from true reality. And this simulation might contain conscious minds that may or may not know that they are living within this simulation. Human curiosity alone tells us that if we were advanced enough at this stage of our evolution to create a simulation to observe, there are many people who would find that type of observation interesting on a multitude of levels. I have a bit of a different theory that I'm going to share a little later in this video. Here's what we know for certain from a logical standpoint. Reality is anything that we can perceive using one or more of our 5 physical senses. However, as Rizwan Virk, a tech entrepreneur, MIT scientist, and author of the simulation hypothesis states, simply because we perceive the world as real and material doesn't mean that it's so. In fact, the findings of quantum physics may shed some doubt on the fact that the material universe is real. The more that scientists look for the material in the material world, the more they find that it doesn't exist. Here are a couple of examples of this. In the well-known double-slit experiment, electrons are fired at a photosensitive screen through slits in a copper plate. This will generally produce an interference pattern that indicates wave-like behavior. But when this same experiment is conducted under observation, electrons behave like particles instead of waves, and there's no interference pattern. As far as simulation theory goes, some have taken this to mean that if we are in fact in a simulation, this happens because that simulation is conserving its resources and rendering certain things only when it knows that we're looking at them. Here's another example that's worth pondering. In 2017, a group of researchers from the University of Washington proved that they could embed malicious computer code into physical strands of DNA. Their goal with this experiment was to show that computers working in gene sequencing were vulnerable to attack. However, they may also have inadvertently revealed that what we perceive to be biological reality has in fact been computer code all along. In a paper written in 2003 by Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom entitled, "Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?" he states that at least one of 3 possibilities is true. 1. All human-like civilizations in the universe go extinct before they develop the technology capable of creating simulated realities. 2. If any civilizations do reach this phase of technological maturity, none of them will bother to run simulations of their evolutionary history. Or 3. Advanced civilizations would have the ability to create simulations. If just one civilization were to reach this simulation point, probability says we are likely simulated beings and we are almost certainly living in a computer simulation. Elon Musk's argument for probability of being in a simulation was stated as this in 2016. 40 years ago, we had Pong, 2 rectangles, and a dot. That is what games were. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. And soon we'll have virtual reality, augmented reality. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, the games will become indistinguishable from reality. And here's Elon Musk sharing more about simulation theory in his own words.
I think most likely this is just about probability. There are many simulations. These simulations are, you might as well call them reality, or you could call them the multiverse. When we create a simulation, like a game or a movie, it's a distillation of what's interesting about life. You know, like it can take a year to shoot an action movie, and then that's all distilled down into 2 or 3 hours. So let me tell you, if you see an action movie being filmed, it's boring, super boring. There's like lots of takes. Everything's in a green screen. Looks pretty goofy. Doesn't look cool. But once you add the CGI and have great editing, it's amazing. So I think most likely, if we're a simulation, it's really boring outside the simulation. Because why would you make a simulation that's boring? You'd make the simulation way more interesting than base reality.
Elon also brought attention to the simulation hypothesis when he claimed that the chances of living in base reality were 1 in billions. And Verk believes it to be somewhere between 50 and 100% that the simulation hypothesis is accurate, stating, "I think it's more likely that we're in simulation than not." The logic behind this hypothesis is that we're already really good at making simulations, and we're getting better at it all the time. In fact, in 2014, the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics connected 8,000 computers in order to create a 350 million light-year simulation of our universe that they digitally aged over 13 billion years. We also currently use computer simulations to predict things such as hurricane paths, earthquakes, the interactions of planets, and to aid scientific studies. Because these simulations have some inherent value, we have more incentive to create them. So what does this mean about our ability to create our reality and have control over our destiny? What we perceive as reality is already partly a simulation created by our brains, because we use our past experiences to process the data that we receive. And we know that the law of attraction works based on probabilities, and how we line ourselves up with those probabilities. Theoretical physicist David Bohm states it like this: "Reality is what we take to be true. What we take to be true is what we believe. What we believe is based upon our perceptions. What we perceive depends on what we look for. What we look for depends on what we think. What we think depends on what we perceive. What we perceive determines what we believe. What we believe determines what we take to be true. What we take to be true is our reality." From the standpoint of what I teach on this channel, we already know that what we believe is our truth is what we experience as our reality. This is how the brain filters information to fit within the parameters of what it has stored away, the programs it has created over the course of time, so that it knows what meaning to give that experience. When we consciously work with our own minds, using affirmations and other subconscious altering modalities, could it be that we're actually altering our own program? And if we were, in fact, in a simulation, wouldn't it be useful to know what the rules of the game are so that we could use that to our advantage to create the life that we choose? Verk states in an interview with Digital Trends, "It's very possible that whoever created our simulation would like to see, given random choices, where we as a civilization would end up. Will we destroy ourselves? Will we end up creating nuclear weapons? Would we end up creating our own simulation?" He goes on to say, "We would want to know what the goals of the game are and what our individual quests might be. We all want to know what our individual quests are and what our achievements are. There are things each of us individually feels called to do. We might have certain goals or experiences that we're here to try to fulfill. So what's the goal of the game? And how do we unplug from the simulation long enough to program it in such a way that we manifest our lives favorably?" Here's my take on it. It's my belief that we each project our consciousness into our physical bodies for the sake of a full, sensory-rich, immersive experience. That experience is a direct reflection of what's in our minds, but it looks and feels as though it's all happening externally. And all of that sensory-rich information has the tendency to overload us and overstimulate us, often causing us to forget who and what we truly are due to how immersive the experience actually is. We are in the simulation, but we are not the simulation itself. It's more like a video game that we learn to play and get better at as we move through the different levels. And we can change the simulation if we don't like it. We change it by changing our consciousness so that what's projected is actually something different. So how do we do this? We have to unplug ourselves from the simulation and recharge our battery. To do this, we must separate from the outer sensory information and go within to access the source of our power to change it. When we fail to do this, we let the simulation control us and oftentimes drain us. But we have the power to control it once we wake ourselves up from the fact that it is in fact malleable. When we connect our consciousness back to our spiritual essence, the quantum realm, the source within us, or whatever you choose to call it, we recharge our batteries and reboot a remembrance of who and what we really are. From there, we have more vitality and more power. We connect to intuitive guidance and intuitive wisdom. And this is when we have the absolute ability to change the outer reality or the simulation. You only have to remove your mind from this outer world long enough to reconnect it back to its original source. And I highly recommend using meditation to do this, to silence the mind from all of the thoughts that pertain to the simulated outer experience and get back to the true self where all of the answers reside. When you change the level of your conscious awareness, you change how that consciousness projects itself as the experience that you have and what it feels like as the experience of your reality. I have several meditations on this channel to assist with that, and I'm going to leave a few links in the description of this video if you'd like to go within to create this type of change. I know this works because I do it daily, and there was a time when I didn't. And before I meditated daily, I felt very much like a victim of things that happened to me rather than for me. So I know when you do begin to do this inner work, you absolutely can gain control of what your outer reflection is delivering back to you. So is it possible that reality isn't reality at all? Could it be that it's all just a feedback loop from your consciousness to your physical body? That's where I tend to lean in my beliefs about what reality truly is. And although simulation theory itself may sound like a far-fetched idea, it's definitely a hypothesis that's popularly discussed in academia by theoretical physicists, technology entrepreneurs, philosophers, astrophysicists, and other scientists. One thing is certain. We all have a very real conscious experience of our individual and collective lives. Reality may not always seem simple, but we have been given free will to make choices that impact our experience in very real ways. We have the absolute power to change our reality at many different levels, with just the use of our conscious minds.